Please welcome to the stage the CEO of Dakota Carrier Network, today's presenting sponsor, Seth Arndorfer.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come in and talk about cybersecurity this morning. My name is Seth Arndorfer. I'm the CEO of DCN, and I've had this position since 2013. I've actually worked at DCN for almost 20 years, or just coming on 20 years, and we celebrated as a company our 25th anniversary yesterday with the Chamber of Commerce and the ambassadors, and I want to start off with thanking the Chamber ambassadors for coming and celebrating in that milestone with us. For those of you that aren't familiar with DCN, we are a fiber-based broadband internet company that was formed by the rural independent telephone companies back in the 90s. They connected farms and schools and small towns in North Dakota. So if you're living in Fargo and you've always lived in Fargo, you maybe aren't as familiar with these cooperatives, but they were really visionaries at the time, 20 years ago when the internet was just starting to be a thing. Now today, we're so reliant on the internet for everything that we do, and that really became apparent as we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully. It's nice to be here in person. Hopefully we get to keep meeting in person as it kind of is ramping up. But as the pandemic came on in 2020, it really shed a light on the importance of internet connectivity in North Dakota. As we sent kids home, as we sent our staffs home, and managed through that, and it really became apparent how well connected North Dakota is. And I'm proud to say that we have over 300 communities across the state that have access to gigabit internet, from small towns like Hettinger, North Dakota, where I'm from. My grandparents' ranch, 30 miles south of Hettinger, has fiber optic infrastructure going to the farm so that my grandma can still live at home at 98 years old because she has access to critical healthcare applications in her house. And I'm just so thankful and proud to be a part of an organization like that. Collectively, these companies have installed over 40,000 miles of fiber to support all sorts of business applications, whether it's all 54 of the critical healthcare institutions that we have fiber into, 160 banking institutions across the state. We connect over 1,000 cell sites with fiber across the state. So when you make a mobile phone call, the chances are very high that you're actually running on a DCN fiber optic cable. We also have 2 data centers, and that's really pertinent to today's conversation as it relates to cybersecurity. There's going to be a lot of conversations about your data, where your data is sitting at rest. How are we handling it when it's in motion, from one user to another? What kind of backups do we have? Is there network data separation so that if our networks are breached, how are we going to get back up and running? I've said it before, many others have said it, but it's really not a matter of if you've been breached. It's, do you know that you've been breached, and how did you handle it? How close was your relationship with your managed service providers, with your internet service providers, with your insurance companies? We'll be talking about that today. Cybersecurity insurance, I can tell you firsthand, they are a critical partner in cybersecurity, in negotiating and maneuvering through these difficult waters that are around cybersecurity. I'm proud. I speak with a lot of pride, and I'm so happy that I can say that as the pandemic hit, we were able to have 99.2% of North Dakota students had access to the internet, and we were able to go to a distance learning education. I'm proud to say that we were able to provide internet to so many homes, but at the same time, I think there's an amount of duty or obligation as a service provider that we talk about cybersecurity. Just because we have the internet in our house doesn't mean we should just let it run wide open and let our kids have access to everything. The same goes to our corporate networks. We have to have that sense of responsibility. We have to be able to talk about it. It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. If you've been hacked, you don't want to advertise it. How do you talk to your customers? How do you talk to your owners? How do you talk to your peers if you were hacked? And I think the amount of people that are coming here today just shows that we're all ready to sit down across the table, start networking, start planning, learn from each other, learn from each other's mistakes. And I think the Chamber is really being a thought leader in putting an event like this together. So hats off to the Chamber. You know, the other thing that I wanted to mention in my opening remarks is that it almost becomes white noise. The seems like daily we hear about the cyber threats. Cyber threats are hitting every facet of our economy. From the energy sector with the Colonial Pipeline breach that just recently happened. It's affecting our food supply with JBS Foods. The government, when the Department of Defense gets hacked, we as small businesses kind of think, well, if the Department of Defense can't cover us, we'll just wait and see what happens when it happens. That's a real easy thing to do, but I'm here today to tell you that's not what we can do. Communications networks. T-Mobile just this week announced that it was in the millions of records, and they went as far as to say social security numbers, username and passwords, electronic ID numbers. I mean, it was so deep, the amount of data that was breached there. And so like I said before, it might be easy just to say, yeah, it's just going to happen, we'll just deal with it when it comes. But I can tell you, DCN, when the pandemic hit and we sent all the employees home, we actually had a cyber incident at DCN. And and Jesse Heck, our Director of Operations, is going to talk about it today a little bit too, but because we had a plan, because we had our data backed up, because we had cybersecurity insurance, and we'd gone through this planning, we were able to quickly get our business completely back up and running without impacting our customers. And I'm proud to say how we came through it. We tried to have a level of transparency with our customers and our stakeholders. We started getting on the phone, having phone calls. We don't have millions of customers, unfortunately, like T-Mobile, but we have really close partners. Our customers we look at as partners, and we got on the phone with them, talked about what happened and how we were moving through it. It's my first time speaking in public for a while with COVID, so I'm a little out of practice, but I went off script, so that always goes well. I want us to just think today of changing our mindset. It's not, are we protected in every way, shape, or form, and are we going to stop a cyber attack from ever happening? I want us to change our mindset to how are we being prepared? It's not if it happens, it's when it happens. And how are we going to respond as an organization, as a family? If your family gets hacked, have a plan and be ready for it when it happens. I again want to extend my gratitude to the Fargo Chamber for the relevant content that we're going to talk about today. And I really want to encourage everybody to look at today as an educational and don't judge. That's the other thing with cybersecurity. It's really easy to take that perspective that, oh, it won't happen to me, and I'd never let that happen. Be careful when you have that. I'm going to move into thanking our sponsors for today's great event. Our gold sponsor is Network Center. Thank you, Network Center. Also, our silver sponsors, Bell Bank, Consolidated Communications, Gate City Bank, Giga Green Technologies, Microsoft, Midco, Sparklight, Starion Bank, Olteg, and Wells Fargo Bank. Let's give them a round of applause. And today's event production sponsor is Super Studio. Thank you. One housekeeping item before we get started. We have a really full agenda this morning, and you're welcome to get up and grab coffee and refreshments over there on the right side of the room and use restrooms during the program. And with that, we're going to get started. We are extremely fortunate to have a stellar lineup of leading cybersecurity experts with us today to share their knowledge and help us gain a better understanding of the challenges organizations are facing today. I'm pleased to introduce our panel of experts and thank them for being with us today. First up on the panel, we have Michael Nugier. is the Director of Cybersecurity for Eide Bailly. Michael, would you come to the stage? Next up, we have Dan Hansen, Senior Vice President of Liability and Client Experience for Marsh McLennan Agency in the Upper Midwest region. Dan? And our last panelist is Jesse Heck, the Director of Operations from DCN. Jesse, can you come up? And our trustee moderator, Art Bakke. He is the Information Security Officer and Assistant Vice President at Starry & Bank. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Art.
Good morning, everyone, and again, thank the Chamber for putting this together for you, the members. We're members too as Starry & Bank, and it's very important that we do get together and we share a common need to be together and as a community. We see people that we recognize, and I know during the COVID we haven't seen as many people, but it's nice to get together again and talk with something that actually hits us all together is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity hits every industry, every sector, every facet of our lives. And in North Dakota, we have 15 of the 16 critical infrastructure. And the 16 critical infrastructure includes energy, healthcare, food, water, finance. The only one we don't have is nuclear power. And so cybersecurity hits us pretty hard here at the state of North Dakota. I've been often quoted as saying, China is as close to North Dakota as Canada is. So when we talk about the world that we live in, there are no boundaries. So we need to make sure that this is something that affects all of us. So I'm going to start out just to talk about. We're going to have each of us talk about what we do so that you have a perspective of where we're coming from. And I'll just start out with Michael. Would you mind speaking about some of the things that you do at Eide Bailly?
Yeah. So I'm Michael Nuguier. It's a fun last name. We got it right this time. This is great. So I'm at Eide Bailly. I've been at Eide Bailly here for about half a year, and I've got about 20 years in the IT and cybersecurity space, doing the adversarial emulation, which is offensive security, and advising around best practices and programs for cybersecurity. And so at Eide Bailly, we have three sections that make up cybersecurity programs, which is advising, integration, and threat management, which we feel is a holistic approach. And then we wrap that with our incident recovery and remediation teams. And we feel that provides that holistic approach to partnering with each and every one of our clients to bring them from where they are in their current state of cybersecurity to a target state, which is strategizing a greater security posture.
So Michael, you had touched on three different things, and could you, for our audience, could you help us understand what those three different areas are?
Yeah, so advising would be strategizing, right? Understanding where you are and understanding where you want to be from a cybersecurity perspective, right? Taking in what data streams you have, how your data sits, your access management, bringing all that in, aligning it with frameworks and best practices in the cybersecurity industry. And that helps drive a strategy for improvement in your cybersecurity program. The integration portion of our cybersecurity services is acting upon that, right? What did we identify from our assessments of your cybersecurity program, and what can we do to, or how are we going to implement these things? Secure configuration. Do we need firewalls? Do we need next-gen antivirus? Do we need to build policies and procedures and playbooks and plans? What gaps existed there, and how can we cover those gaps? And that's the integration portion. And then the threat management portion is that visibility into your network, managed services, penetration testing, application security consulting, really driving deeper into the technical assessments around that, and then incident management. What happens if? What happens when? How do we do this? Tabletop exercises. How do we respond? And we provide that trusted partnership with a lot of our clients to respond if and when something were to happen.
Okay. So, Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do over at McClellan and Agency?
Okay, thanks, Art. Yeah, Dan Hansen. I'm with Marsh McLennan Agency, affiliated with Dawson Insurance here in Fargo. I'm out of the Twin Cities. I'm not going to say how long I've been in the business because it's gonna date me here a little while, but I've been around. Let's put it that way. I lead a team that specializes in what I would say specialty insurance. So directors and officers, E&O, cyber liability. Cyber liability being probably 60 to 70% of my job right now just because of what's going on in this space. What we do with our clients is we try to prepare them in advance for the risk. You know, these are some things to think about. Not going to be nearly as helpful as these guys in this arena, but try to align them with the right resources and get the right tools around them to prepare them so they don't have an event, because nobody wants an event. But we also then place the insurance for them and make sure they have the right insurance that aligns with their needs. And then we have claims handling that we work with our clients and get them through the claims. And like I think somebody alluded to earlier, the first 48 hours to 72 hours in an event are extremely challenging. So, you know, we want to, we've got people that have been there a number of times that can guide our clients through events. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dan. Jesse?
Jesse Heck, Director of Operations for Dakota Carrier Network. Been with Dakota Carrier Network for 21 years and lead our technical teams around, we have the 2 data centers, one here in Fargo and one in Bismarck. Lead those technical teams to support those facilities along with our network operations center supporting our other carrier Ethernet and wavelength broadband services.
Okay, thank you. So for the audience, what we want is audience participation. We have about 300 or so folks here. We have folks watching online virtually with us. And so what we're going to ask is that if you're shy, you can send an email to events@fmwfchamber.com. Again, that's events@fmwfchamber.com. I'll receive those. They're going to be moderated to me. If you're not shy, go ahead and we'll have a microphone that's in the crowd, and just flag down that person with the microphone and ask the question, because we want to make this interactive. We're a community. We're here for you. We want to make sure that you're learning new things from these folks here. A little bit about myself. I am the Information Security Officer and an Assistant Vice President at Starion Bank. I have about 28 years of information technology and information security experience with the United States Air Force, retired, North Dakota State Government. Also, I work at Starion Bank now, and we are a super community bank, family owned, $1.2 billion. We are in North Dakota and Wisconsin, and I help to protect that infrastructure for our organization and for our customers. I'm responsible for our business continuity management, incident response, disaster recovery, education and awareness to our staff. I work with audits and assessments as a liaison between risk management and our external auditors. And then I also do vendor management, and I just picked up records management too. So there's a lot of cool things that I get to do at Starion Bank. It's pretty fun. So how this started here, and I just want to give a little bit of context, is there was a conversation between Tracy Powell from the Chamber and our market president here in Fargo. And the conversation surrounded cybersecurity. And Dan Stoller, our market president, got me together with Tracy. And Tracy said, "Do you have a little bit of time to talk about cybersecurity?" And I said, "Absolutely. Any day of the week, I love talking about cybersecurity. It's one of my passions." And so I think after, she wanted to find out what the viability of this type of conference setting for our chamber would how would that go well? Is it something that's really important? And I think after about 15 minutes of our conversation, she was just amazed by the magnitude of what cybersecurity is. And if you think cybersecurity is just ones and zeros, bits and bytes, you've got it wrong. We are all about, as I said, business continuity planning. We're the people that you look for in the event that you have an incident, a disaster. We're the ones that are helping with that. I'm going to ask for a show of hands, just for our you know us now, but I want to see a show of hands of how many of you consider yourselves small businesses? Okay. And I'll even put my hand up. How about medium-sized businesses? Okay. A few more. Right? Well, actually, a little bit less. And then what about large corporations? Okay, one. Okay, so a lot of small business here, and that gives us a perspective. So, how many of you have had an incident? Show of hands. How many of you had an incident? Okay. If you didn't get affected by COVID last year, well, that's an incident. We consider that an incident. When I think about incidents, we think about natural disaster, man-made, or technical disasters. It's not just cybersecurity here. I also have the ability, the honor of serving as an adjunct professor at Bismarck State College, too, so I teach BCM, DR, and IR. So trying to get that next generation of cyber warriors out there, and we definitely need more cyber warriors. So what we're going to do, again, there's mics in the crowd, so raise your hand and talk to us, ask questions. And then also online, please send us an email. So we're going to start out, and we're going to talk about what the threats are. John Bonnage, he's from the FBI, and you're going to hear him speak later this morning. He calls these threat actors. This is what it's called in the government space. These threat actors are nation states, such as Russia and China, cyber criminals, people who want to steal, cyber terrorists, people who want to create terrorism through the cyber world. You have your cyber script kiddies, the people that are sitting in the basements of what we think of as mom and dad's house. And then you have your cyber hacktivists who want to make a change to our way of life through hacktivism. And so what I'm going to ask the panel is based on the threats. So I want to know what your thoughts are on what are the threats out there that you're seeing from your lens. And you can go, whoever's ready.
I love to talk, so I'll start. There's one thread in particular that I think all of us are thinking about in this room, and if you haven't heard about it, it's ransomware. I think we already mentioned it a couple times today. And so that's been a topic of almost every conversation I've had with any client or any person interested in talking about cybersecurity is, what do I do about ransomware? And so when I look at what the threat landscape is and what we're seeing in the news, right? I think in the last, I think just as Seth was saying, every month we've seen, if not every week, some form of ransomware hitting us. And so when we think threat landscape, we think ransomware instantly is the one threat that everybody is worried about at this point in time. And it's transformed dramatically since when I first got into cybersecurity and I got a ransomware computer at the organization that I was running security for. And it was a $500 ransomware and didn't even think twice, right? Like, oh, we can throw 15 people on this and try and recover from one ransomware computer at $500 to, right, $70 million for the Kaseya attack that happened over the 4th of July weekend, which is not an uncommon thing that we'll probably hear about later in the presentation around incident response, is that we see that threat actors often try to make it as inconvenient as possible. And so when's the best time to strike? It's when most people are gone. I myself, over the 4th of July weekend, was camping in the middle of Colorado and had 0 cell service. And I had about 45 text messages from everybody that I know in the industry saying, oh my gosh, are you seeing this? This is This is like the solar winds of 2021. It's another supply chain type attack, which if you don't know what a supply chain attack is, we'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit, is right, getting in through a trusted means earlier on in the process is an attack, right? And getting your code or your malicious code integrated into a trusted platform like Kaseya, like SolarWinds, where lots and lots of different organizations are using that. And so there's this implied trust that organizations are doing when they're installing certified software. And so the second thing that leads to my second point on threat landscape, which is attack sophistication. But I'm gonna leave ransomware open for everybody here to talk about, especially from a cyber insurance perspective.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll jump in there. I think, Michael alluded to it, but the big thing we're seeing with ransomware is just the size of these events. Like back in 2018, the average, maybe ransomware payment was $5,000, right? Today, it's up over $200,000. I was on a carrier call earlier this week, and they said even in 2020, their average ransomware payment was $450,000. I mean, pretty large carrier, right? Today it's 1.2 million, and it's trending. They're seeing already in the third quarter here, which we're barely into the third quarter, right, at 1.3 million. So just the sheer size of these payments that are going out for ransomware events are really, affecting our clients to a great degree. And then the average downtime that we're seeing within our clients too, where it used to be maybe 15 days where they'd have business interruption, they weren't operating at full capacity or whatever it may be. Now that's shifted up to 23, maybe 25 days. So you think of that business interruption loss, right? You have a big fire or you have a tornado hit your building, you can get back up and running. Without their IT, without their IT infrastructure, it's really impacting our clients and impacting, just the commerce in general. And I think your point about the supply chain, that's just enormous, right? We see, there's managed service providers or some little, not little, but some group in the chain. If they go down, we learn how much that impacts all the rest of the businesses downstream and upstream from that business, and that is a huge phenomenon of these events as well. So I'd say, we're seeing business and email compromise, we're seeing funds transfer fraud, those type of things, but ransomware is definitely the headline that we're seeing within our client space and what we're trying to help resolve.
Yeah, I would agree. The ransomware certainly is the attack tool of choice that we're seeing out there. And to talk a little bit about the how it's evolved, right? Michael talked about the single computer, and I think that's how it started. Someone would click on an email, one computer is encrypted. To recover that's pretty easy. Then it started going from that computer to, okay, I'm going to encrypt not only that computer, but all the attached network drives on that computer. And now these cyber criminals are getting into your network and they search across your entire network, and now they're locking up and encrypting your entire server infrastructure. But what's really changed in the last couple of years then is also the data exfiltration tied to the ransomware. So now they exfiltrate, take some of your data off-site that's in their possession, then they encrypt your servers. And I'm assuming it's for two reasons. One being it ups the ante, it gives them more leverage to get that ransom payment. And second of all, your data is now out there, and that can be used for other fraudulent activity in the marketplace. And then in relation to the supply chain attack, that's another one that I had on my list as well. The tricky thing about that is those are vulnerabilities that are put in hardware and software before they ever arrive to you. So you might have a great cybersecurity posture, and part of that is patching your systems. So you go out and patch your system from a piece of software you got from your vendor, which actually exposes a vulnerability on your network and infrastructure that you never had before. So I think that's the tricky part about some of those.
So I'm going to ask the question, out of those 5 threat adversaries or threat actors, where's it coming from? What's the big one for you? Is it all over?
I think whoever finds it first, right? Like it's all opportunistic, right? The public-facing internet is just that, it's public, and there's a footprint out there, and it's not hard to see what's out there, right? There are services like Shodan that you can traverse the entire public-facing internet and see what's out there, what to access, and so that gives from the white hat side the capability to say, oh, here's my externally facing attack surface, but it also gives every other person, whether it's a script kiddie or a cyber criminal, access to look and see what's out there and what they can go after.
So for you guys, I think about why, we have a lot of small business, medium-sized businesses in here. Why should we care? I mean, we're just a small business. Why do they want us?
Well, first off, it's real money, right? If we're paying a $400,000 ransomware demand for very little work, if we're an easy target, we can go in, we can put a ransomware demand out there, and either insurance or somebody's going to remit those funds so we don't go out of business. That's real money. But then also as a business owner, what the stats are out there, and you can have a lot of fun with stats, right? But what 50 to 60% of people that suffer a catastrophic cyber event, they're out of business within a year. So I mean that's why I'd be concerned, because it can affect my business to the point where I'm no longer can support my family and support all my employees' families.
And I think, right, I'm gonna play this point a lot. It's opportunity, right? It has outside of cyber hacktivism, if you will, right? From a malicious perspective, we are scanning any computer that we can see that is public, right? And if it has a vulnerability that is exploitable, that is the opportunity that we're looking for. And so whether it's the Fortune 100s of the world or the small businesses and medium-sized businesses of Fargo, there is a public presence there, and opportunity is what we're looking for from the malicious aspect. So I think that's where I would stick with that.
Yeah, I would say that in the world, when you're on the internet, you're just a number, right? You're just an IP address. They're looking for opportunity. So if that opportunity presents itself, they're not looking at its DCN. Obviously, there are targeted attacks out there, but they're not looking at us as DCN. They see an IP address, they scan, they see ports open, they look for vulnerabilities. You're just a number. So it doesn't matter who you are or where you are, they can find you.
Well, we talked about the threat landscape. We talked about who our adversaries are. We talked about the threats that are out there, and we're hearing ransomware as the largest threat to our existence, our organizations. I want to move into challenges and talk about what challenges are you seeing from your perspective that you're dealing with, and also challenges for our business folks out here that what are they seeing? And in fact, if you have questions with regards to challenges, please send that to our email address. But let us know what challenges you have.
I'd say one of the biggest challenges is knowing where to begin, right? Understanding where you are is the first key, and so that's the biggest challenge. And then from there, there's only like 1,500 cybersecurity software companies out there, and I think the number is going to double in the next year, right? There's a startup upon a startup that offers the next generation of protection, prevention, whatever buzzword is out there. And so that's one of the biggest challenges, is that even in my role, I get a LinkedIn invite, an email, unsolicited marketing that is, hey, we're the next big thing and you should invest in us, and we'll prevent ransomware, we'll prevent whatever. And so that gets this overwhelmingly it just gets overwhelming nonetheless to manage that. Which software is best? Why should I use that software? And that's one of the biggest challenges we see out there.
Yeah, I'd probably say resources and understanding. Resources being, small, mid-sized business, you only have X amount of employees. No offense to the IT folks out there, but not always seen as revenue additive, not always a growth engine, sometimes actually seen as people that maybe put roadblocks up so we can't get things done. So, getting the right resources around our data security, either outsourcing it or having it on staff seems to be a challenge for a lot of the folks that I talk to, having those resources. And then also, but I think maybe even more important is understanding, like that business owner does not always, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, always understand the whole IT infrastructure landscape. They don't understand what they're protecting against, right? They know how, if they want to avoid a fire, they're not supposed to stack their boxes a certain height. They know they need a certain kind of sprinkler. They know they need fire doors, all those things. That's been trained over the years. IT security, an ever-evolving landscape, they flat out just don't understand it. So they maybe be going to the wrong people to ask the questions. I'm reflecting back on a meeting I had earlier this week with a PE firm, and pretty large PE firm, a lot of assets under management, and sitting in a room with the CFO and the general counsel, and we're talking about actually directors and officers of insurance, but we start talking about cyber, because that's a real impact at the board level for a company of this size, right? What are you doing around cyber? Well, we don't have insurance right now. Why not? Well, because Jim says we're okay. Who's Jim? He's our IT guy. I'm like, okay, Jim's the wrong guy to ask. Jim's protecting his job, and really, if he was really protecting his job, he should want cyber insurance, right? But they needed to get other resources in there and look at their infrastructure, look at their risk management plan, and probably get an outside opinion on that, and get a better understanding what their risk was and what the potential for a loss was.
Yeah, I would agree with all of those points. I think your employee wearing multiple hats in the small business, being your IT person and maybe your accountant at the same time, that creates problems, right? Because their focus is going to be on accounting, not on IT. Maybe you're calling in a third-party MSP to help you, but you don't have someone that's watching that infrastructure all the time, and that's just lack of resource. You may not have an IT person at all, and that's where the issues start in the beginning. I think second of all is the lack of budget, not having the resources to invest and spend in cybersecurity. And I think there's some really easy, non-expensive things that people can do that are kind of that low-hanging fruit that everyone can do to improve their security posture. And the last one, we kind of touched on it before for me, is that false sense of security that, hey, we're a small company, we don't have anything that anybody wants. We're anonymous out there, right? And like I said before, you're a number, and maybe you don't have anything. It's not always about intellectual property, it's about that opportunity. And if there's a hole in your infrastructure and they can get in there, you might not think you have anything, but if they shut down your billing system, if they shut down your sales and marketing websites so you can't sell the widgets and things that you make and do that make you money, that will impact you. And we talked a little bit about the cost of those breaches and what it costs. It's not zero, so it certainly costs you money. So to spend that money budgetary up front is a better solution.
So I have some questions from the audience, and thank you very much. We've had some brave people send in some questions. And so for an IT leader who has trouble getting the C-level suite to provide budget to security, what do you consider must-haves for your protection?
I think this would probably be best answered from the cyber insurance perspective, because they're starting to require these questionnaires as we're meeting with clients and we're seeing applications go out for cyber insurance. They're requiring 10 things that need to be done, and so that's
I mean, if you want to buy insurance, and I'm not saying insurance drives the world, but if you want to buy insurance for this, I mean, you have to have multi-factor authentication on all open ports right now. I mean, you need multi-factor authentication, endpoint encryption, a disaster recovery plan of some sort. And then, what I like to tell people is don't just have the recovery plan, practice it, know what you're going to do, good backups. Practice using your backups, make sure they work. If you have an event, we see so many folks that they check all the boxes on the application, and that used to work. Now you actually have to have things that physically work, and you've practiced them, and there's a plan in place. So when you get hit in the mouth, if you will, you can climb back up off the mat and keep fighting, and that's what we're kind of preaching.
Yeah, I liken that to running a marathon. Every time I talk about tabletop exercises and exercising the plans that you have in place, is you're not going to wake up one morning and go run 26 miles, right? And in the same vein, you're not going to wake up one morning and experience an incident and implement a plan that you've never tested before. And I think that comes like full circle with ransomware, even your business continuity, your disaster recovery. A lot of times companies are paying ransoms because they've never tested their backup protocols and plans. And what happens is they want to push from their backups, and they realize that the time to do that, it might be 3 to 4 years for their backups to be fully reinstated because they've never tested it. They've never gained the efficiencies in that. And so I think that exercise is really what is a good focus for a must-have.
So I've heard some acronyms thrown out, and not everyone in this crowd is IT. And you talked about, Dan, you talked about MFA, and tell us what MFA is. We know what that is, and tell us maybe a couple forms of MFA that we could use in our enterprise.
Yeah, sorry about that. So multi-factor authentication is MFA. So 2 modes of confirming that it's you, if you will, just to simplify it. And I simplify it for me. I'm not an IT expert. 2 ways to figure it out. So like in our, our IT infrastructure, I log in with my Windows password every day, and then I get my phone buzzes. I get a 6-digit code, and I plug that in, and then they know it's Dan, or hopefully it's Dan, and I can continue to work. So multi-factor authentication is what that means, and it's just and this goes like to even like funds transfer fraud, right? If we've had so many folks that will wire money to the wrong place, and you seriously just wired $75,000 to China. Well, we were busy, and that's the way Michael always sends his emails, and so I went with it. What do you do? But if you get that email from Jesse and it says, hey, wire $75,000 and I need it by 2 o'clock because I've got this big thing, pick up the phone and call Jesse and say, hey, do you really need this money? And you'd be shocked how many times we've had, not 75,000, I'm on the low end. We've had 400,000, 500,000, $850,000 just wires just shooting off, and it's gone. What did I do?
It's that urgency that really drives it too, which is a common tactic from a malicious perspective. We need this done immediately, and when that comes from a spoofed email from the CEO or the head of the business unit, right? That urgency drives what you do. So yeah, $75,000. I'm going to send that away right now because he told me it had to be done ASAP.
And he really likes me. He sent it to me, no one else. He really likes me.
Right. I've never talked to him before in my life, but he needs me to do this now.
I think the important part about that question we were responding to was the budget piece of it, and budgets are a challenge, but there's a lot of things that you can do and start doing even if you don't have that big budget. It's not all about buying the right software, buying the hardware to protect yourself. There's a million gadgets out there and organizations providing cyber help. The budget might just be, if you're a single shop, to have authorization to bring an MSP in for a second opinion where you need to strengthen yourself. There's removal of local admin rights. It's a configuration issue, right? MFA is a configuration issue. Most of us probably are on Office 365. MFA is in Office 365. You just got to configure it. You don't have to buy anything more. It's there. We just have to use those tools that are out there. So it's not always about budget. I think you graduate into budget.
It's the education piece for sure. I would agree on that, right? Knowing that you can turn that feature on, having somebody trusted that you can ask about those features and implementing those is key.
And the second part of their question is really, what is it? And then how is it proven to be helpful? What does that do in the scheme of security? What as a control?
MFA?
Yeah.
Yeah, so MFA, right, is classified as something you have, something you know, and I think that the third one is something that you are, right? A biometric, an eye, a finger, something along those lines.
Something where you're at, too.
Yes, or where you are. Yes, unauthorized particular address of a computer, something along those lines. And so what that does is it creates that second factor to another trusted source so that when your password is stolen, because it's named after your pet or the season and the year, and then you put some complexity in there. So winter 2021 ! Right? When that password is stolen, right, there's still that other authentication method, and that's what we want to try and push with multi-factor authentication. Whether it's your fingerprint, a USB key, the 6-digit inconvenient code that you get texted, and it could never come fast enough, right? Those are the things that aren't known, and they're dynamic, they're constantly changing, or they're not in somebody else's possession, and that's why it protects the login.
So we have a brave audience member in the back of the room has a question. So would you mind asking the question of the panel?
Good morning. Many of us are on public Wi-Fi this morning. what are some of the risks that might be associated with using public Wi-Fi?
I thought we were going to address that. Don't leave your laptops at your seat and walk away. Don't join the public Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you're amongst a bunch of cybersecurity people who think a little different sometimes.
From my perspective, public Wi-Fi is just that, right? Everybody joins, everybody gets on the same network. And so what you are doing is a part of that network. The reason that we have VPNs with our companies is because that encrypts what you do from an internet perspective. Or from your computer's perspective on that Wi-Fi, any data that's traversing. So if you're accessing your bank account or you're going to a non-secured website, there could be somebody on that network, because it is public and it's not posting who's on there, that could be monitoring what you're doing. It's called a man-in-the-middle attack. So not encrypting that traffic, not using a VPN is really the detriment there. The VPN that your organization sets up, again, probably has multi-factor authentication on it. You have to get the 6-digit code and you have to log in, and it's inconvenient. But that provides a tunnel for your traffic that is not easily broken from an encryption perspective. And that's what we would recommend when you are connecting to public Wi-Fi.
So, I mean, is it safe for us to be here in this room connected to the Holiday Inn's public Wi-Fi? I mean, really, how safe are we?
I'm going to let somebody else answer that one. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
I'm just going to answer from the layman. I don't do it. I'm not sure why, but I don't do it. It doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, I think it's not just guest Wi-Fi, it's Wi-Fi in general, right? It's a technology that can be spoofed pretty easily. For example, at DCN, we do have Wi-Fi, we have guest Wi-Fi at our facilities, but even our office Wi-Fi does not connect directly into our network. You have to get on the Wi-Fi and then VPN into the network, because if that network is spoofed, plus it bypasses your physical security of your office space. They can now sit in a parking lot and get onto your network. They don't have to get into any doors or anything like that. So in a more targeted attack.
Yeah. I think if you log on to the Holiday Inn Wi-Fi, you probably got popped up with what's called a captive portal page, which probably has terms and conditions that nobody in here read when they connected to it. But you check the box, and what it basically says is they're not responsible for anything that happens on that Wi-Fi network. And so if you lose your data, somebody steals your bank account or your passwords, that's on you. And so most of us have a cell phone that has a hotspot on it. And so when you do go into public spaces, the last resort should be connecting to that public Wi-Fi, and it should be connecting to your cell phone Wi-Fi if you absolutely need that internet. And then if you do connect to public Wi-Fi, turn on your VPN that has multi-factor authentication on it.
All right, so I've got quite a few questions, and this is awesome. So I'm going to pick one here. If you're using an IT company to monitor your network, what do they need to have in place, or what do you need to ask them to make sure that you're protected?
I can take that one to start. I think it differs by who you choose. Some of them have an appliance that they want to put on site. Some of it's an agent, so they can gather. It depends what the engagement is. If it's a full monitor, detect, respond, an MDR solution, they're probably pulling all the logs in from your computers. They're looking at your antivirus logs. So what they'll need is more than likely an internet connection, so those devices can speak up to the cloud and they can aggregate all that information.
Yeah, I mean, just from talking to clients, I think the things that I hear are most effective is monitoring that traffic, what's going in and out of our system, what IP addresses are there, are they, typical traditional IP addresses, or are they, on a watch list, so it elevates things more quickly. Certainly making sure the patches are up to date and things. I mean, some of this stuff is, like Michael said earlier, these are crimes of opportunity, right? Some of this stuff is just low-hanging fruit that you can get in place, and it's gonna, you're not gonna be perfect, but nobody's perfect, right? I mean, it's gonna elevate you from here up to here is what you're after. So just some of that blocking and tackling that you can do, that if you don't have that infrastructure in place within your organization, is what I would ask that service provider to provide.
Yeah, I think from a technical perspective, yes, agents, visibility is the key there, right? If somebody's monitoring your network and they don't have visibility, what are they actually monitoring? I think outside of that, you need to know what the service level agreements are. when are they going to respond, how are they going to respond, what's that communication going to be like, and then what accountability is in that. And so those are all good questions from an advising perspective to ask when you go into that managed service.
And I'll add to that, there's, when we talk about budget again from a small business and you're a single IT person for your company, looking at options like that, there's a lot of AV options out there, antivirus options that you can tack on for a couple dollars a month as part of the subscription plan to it to have a full MDR solution. So they're watching that network for you, so you don't have to have an employee that's staring at that pane of glass monitoring your network all the time. They're watching that for you. They're probably sending you, they know what your environment is, so they can send you alerts of the different threats that are out there, some of those security advisories. So it's a real cheap solution.
And so this ties into that last question. As a small business in an ever-changing environment, how do you keep up with the technology to be protected?
I'm going to answer, and I'll give the simple answer, and then you guys you're going to give the right answer. But try, go and find different resources. Again, these are crimes of opportunity. So work on having things in place. Educate your employees. Have that disaster recovery plan. Just try to find like the simple things to have in place. And I want to just back up a point that was made earlier here. When you're bringing in outside services or outside providers to do things, look at your contract pretty closely. And you may not be able to push back on that, but you may be able to push back on that and make sure that you're not just, you're hiring them to protect your liability and your risk, but they're pushing all that risk back on you via that contract. Make sure you understand what that contract says, and make sure if they make a mistake or they, don't provide what they say they're going to provide in that service agreement, that they have some kind of insurance backing to them. Make sure that there's something to indemnify you. Most IT providers, most outside consultants, no offense, their asset is their people, right? They don't have a huge balance sheet. They don't have a big operating plant that you're going to be able to go attach on and make yourself, whole again if something should go wrong. So understand that contract you've just signed and understand what that backing is for that contract for these service providers bring to you.
I would almost say even at minimum have a relationship or engage some small or some technology business to help you. If your business is so small that you don't have IT staff on board, you want to be part of, you want to have someone ahead of time that you've had an engagement with so that you know what they can and cannot help you with.
Yeah, trusted partners are vital when it comes to understanding just the entirety of what softwares are out there. I think the community that is cybersecurity is a really close community. I think we were all sitting down as a panel last night, and we were talking about all the people that we know in the industry, and oh yeah, I know we used to hang out, and oh yeah, and that passes on this knowledge around the different technologies. I know people that have gone from technology company to technology company, and so we're hearing about these things as we're keeping up these relationships, and so the community that is cybersecurity helps with that, and then identifying trusted partners, right, aligning with a couple of trusted partners to understand what is best for your environment, assessing your environment, that current state that I keep talking about, where you're at, where you need to be, and what technologies and concepts can get you moving to that target state.
So we'll switch a little bit, and I'm going to have Dan speak to this first, but for the small, medium-sized organizations represented this morning, can you help us understand what we need to consider as we determine what level of cyber insurance is expected? Because really, I have insurance. I'm a small business. I have insurance, liability insurance. Aren't I covered if something happens? Really is the essence of that question. And so perhaps some details on what is covered and what's not, and what are the triggers that activate insurance coverage. We know that dollar cost is one, and then there's the cost of data loss. But what about reputation and perception losses? Reputational.
Okay, if I miss something here, come back to me. But my least favorite question, I always say that. That's how I start this answer. Like, what limit of insurance do I buy? Right? When we're talking at the table before you have an event, I'm selling you way too much insurance. Once you have an event, or why didn't you sell me more insurance? It's a very tough spot to be. But I would say, it really depends on the amount of information you're holding. somewhat the level of your IT security, and then what you anticipate. How good are your backups? What's how much downtime would you have? I would say if anybody said $100,000 is enough, they're misleading you. We would not sell an insurance policy that's below $1 million in limit for cyber liability, and quite often we're building towers. We've got towers that are $100 million, depending on the size of the client for an event, right? And things, they get less expensive per million as you move up, but there's some pretty significant insurance towers right now around cyber liability. But I think for most small to medium-sized business, probably that $1, $3, $5 million level is probably gonna satisfy you. Make you whole after an event. But that's what we'd look towards. And then you also have to think about what's covered under that policy, right? There's a lot of different components of the policy, and I'm sorry to talk insurance with you at 9 o'clock on a whatever Thursday morning, but I'm gonna hit on a few things quickly, because ransomware, that ransomware payment, that's a pretty common question. If I have a ransomware event, will ransomware be covered? The answer was the right policy, yes. Ransomware is covered. It's a covered thing. In fact, almost to a fault, I would say, because we're paying, insurance is paying these large ransomware demands, and business is good, and there's more and more ransoms. So, that's at some point, I'd expect that to level off, but ransomware is covered. Business interruption, I touched on that earlier. So if your business is down for, 20 days as you're getting backups up and running, you're checking encryption keys and those type of things, again, with the right insurance policy, business interruption is covered. There's also contingent business interruption that you can get in an insurance policy. So if your managed service provider goes down and they have an event and it's a cyber event that, and it affects your business and causes a business interruption loss, again, depending on the right insurance policy, you can have contingent business interruption covered within the policy. You mentioned reputational, I think. That's a coverage that can also be in there. So if you can prove this out, and keep in mind there's some forensic accounting that goes on in this, but hey, because of this event, we're a retail organization or whatever, we're an online sales organization, we had a very public event, it impacted our sales 20% over the course of the last year, you can receive coverage for that as well. So there's and I think probably the biggest part of the coverage that you're looking for is that forensic piece. What happened to me? How long did it happen for, and who was affected, right? Bringing these guys in. I mean, their meter runs pretty hot. It's a good business right now, right? We're short on IT folks, and we got to get them in there, and we got to get back up and running. That would be covered as well within the insurance policy, if it's written correctly and it's out there. Now, the insurance marketplace, I joke, you used to be able to, like 3 years ago, you could essentially fog a mirror and somebody give you a cyber liability policy. You give your name, you give your employee count, and they give you a cyber liability policy. Today, you're attesting to your multi-factor authentication, you're filling out a ransomware supplement, you're doing a lot of different steps to get there, and the market's, the pricing's going up, but relative to what we're seeing from a claims activity, I'd say it's still pretty a reasonably priced marketplace. I don't know, has anybody gone through a cyber insurance renewal here in the last little while? Has anybody seen a price decrease? No. Okay. I think that's if you did, I'd like to talk to you. But anyways, it's the market's going up dramatically. But I think not to be a apologist for the insurance companies, but I think it kind of needs to. There was way too much coverage being thrown in these policies for way too little money, and now it's somewhat right sizing. But I think we're getting there. So.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing from cyber insurance perspective is don't purchase a policy and just file it away. Michael alluded to earlier the tabletop exercise, practicing your incident response. Know what you have, talk to them, include them in that tabletop exercise. They're all going to handle it a little bit differently, and when you get into an incident response, it's probably one of the first calls, or should be one of the first calls you make. So make sure you know what you have and how to contact them and how the process is going to work.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I rewrote our incident response plan, totally rewrote it this year in May, just to add more scenarios to it. And I reached back to my insurance provider and said, this is our incident response plan. I want you to insert where we need to contact you, and I need you to insert what you would do when we contact you, and I need you to insert any forms that you need so that we're prepared, and that's in our incident response plan. So that's a deal. You need to have these relationships ahead of time so that when you're in it, and we heard Seth talk about it, it's not if we're going to get a data breach, it's when it's going to happen, but you need to be prepared for that. And I would say us in the upper Midwest are very proactive about things. A lot of us came from farmsteads, and it's amazing how long equipment will last on those farmsteads because we're proactive in maintaining things. And these types of maintenance are routine to cybersecurity, to information technology. It's good maintenance. So we went from threats, we went to challenges, and so I'm going to move forward because we're getting into this space, and the next topic was what can we do? What are some quick fixes? We still have questions that I've received, and we have one here in the back. Actually, let's take the back question here.
It's probably a question for Dan, but talking about cybersecurity, insurance, and the federal government looking for solutions to help curb some of this. How the federal government handles that going to affect some of these cybersecurity policies that may have a clause that void their policy if it's deemed a terrorist attack?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. So, you cannot remit funds to a nation state, that's adverse to the U.S., right? So we've had several cyber or ransomware events where, like, maybe it's coming from Iraq or Iran or something like that, and the insurance policy cannot remit funds to that bad actor if they're in that that jurisdiction or that locale. So that's something you'd mentioned. What is not covered? We've seen a few events where we cannot cover that, and I see the insurance carriers working through that, trying to resolve how can we get payment to the people that were affected, and not get those funds to that bad actor. But that's a challenge that we're seeing, and I think I don't know if this is quite on point to what you'd asked, but hopefully it is. There's a lot of different laws out there. You got GDPR, in the European group. We have CCPA in California. We have, the New York financial regulation. Regulation everywhere, right? And sometimes that somewhat contradicts or conflicts depending on what your business is, how you should operate. So that's a challenge too, right? So I see at some point here, and I feel, and maybe others have a different view, but there should be some federal legislation around this, and some minimum standards across industries, so that we can have some consistency, so our people know at least what is right, not all this conflict. And but I think that's I don't know if anyone's noticed, it seems a little challenging to get things done at the federal level right now within government, but that seems to be something we probably should be moving toward to help people, to give them some guidance around those issues.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dan. Let's go to what can we do here. And so some of the things here, and I'm seeing around user education, workforce, even when an incident occurs. So I'm just going to pick. I'm going to pick a question here. So I'm going to say, for small businesses, what are some best practices in communicating an incident to the clients and the community without inciting unnecessary fear and ruining the organization's image?
Have a PR person communicate it. Don't have your IT person communicate that. Somebody that is classically trained in communicating and verbal judo would be the right first step there.
Yeah, I would just say, we've seen a lot of cases where people have over-communicated too early without understanding what happened and who was really affected, and for all the right reasons, but they've communicated way too much information that wasn't accurate and caused a big uproar, and we found out later it wasn't as big a deal, or hey, this isn't just a segment was impacted. And I think Seth said there's a lot of white noise around cybersecurity. I mean, people, there's a little. I mean, I get letters, right, that your record's been impacted. They usually go in the circular file. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on those. I'm just kind of expecting it these days, and I think a lot of people are there. So I just, I always say, let's take a pause. We'll let people know, but let's make sure we're letting them know what's accurate and correct and at the right pace.
I would say don't hide behind it. Certainly get out in front of it, speak about it. I don't think you need all the details up front, but I think the sooner you can tell your customers, your affiliates that you've had a breach is very important, especially if there's a possibility it could expand and affect their businesses. So the sooner they know, the sooner they can put mitigation measures in place to help offset anything that could be coming their way. So I think you want to be upfront, honest, don't lie, don't cover it up. It's like I said, it's happening more and more all the time, and you can learn from each other. So I think share those experiences and those stories makes us all better.
Yeah, we saw that example with the SolarWinds hack. Mandiant got a lot of praise. Mandiant is a very large cybersecurity company known for their incident response and their tools for visibility. And they came out and said, "We've had this incident, and it was very very well accepted in the cybersecurity community. Their openness and their accountability and their willingness to take that responsibility." And then in the same vein, I think SolarWinds got a little bit of criticism because they blamed it on an intern, and they said it's not our fault, and there were a couple of issues with that. And so, right, this is like the tale of two cities, essentially, right? One owned up to it and walked away, with a black eye because they did have a cybersecurity incident. No shame in that. Everybody has those to some extent. And then the other one didn't own up to it, and they walked away with a different, like two black eyes essentially in that case. And so I just resonate with what you're saying there.
So as we get into that third, what can we do? So I'm just going to go on to the panel. I have questions, and I think we can envelope or put those questions into this. But what are some quick fixes that we can do as small, medium-sized, even large businesses to help us with our cybersecurity maturity?
So I think we've hit on some of these already. I'm kind of going small business, low budget, maybe not employee resources of things we can do. The first one is eliminating that local admin rights, right? If you're working on your computer and you have local admin rights, you're just waiting for something to happen. You're going to click on the wrong link one day, and they'll be able to take over that computer, spread through your network with that lateral movement, and you'll have a much bigger mess on your hand. Even if you're a small shop, you got one computer in the shop and you're a single employee business, have two accounts, right? Make one an admin account that you only use to make changes on that device, and your everyday account, have two accounts. So that's just a configuration change. Have a plan. If you don't have a plan, leave here today and start simple. What are the first three things you're gonna do in the event of a breach? Who are you gonna call? Can you get a hold of those people after hours? I think as we talked last night, that these threats and these attacks usually don't happen at 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning. So it's going to probably be a Saturday or Sunday at 2 o'clock in the morning. So make sure that you've practiced your plan. And user education. I think educating our users on what not to click. You're going to educate them all day long. They're still going to click. But the more and more headway you can make on that, the better you're going to be.
Well, I'm just going to echo. I think the two things I would talk about is employee awareness, making sure, your vulnerability is your lowest common denominator, right? So making sure that everyone is aware of the cybersecurity threat to your organization, and then having them, practicing again, being aware of events, maybe some, fake phishing emails, whatever it may be, to make them aware. Even like holding the door open if you have like a secure place, and we're all pretty nice here in the upper Midwest where somebody's carrying boxes in or something like that, and you hold the door open and they go in, and pretty soon they're sitting down at a vacant computer and typing away, right? I mean, just making sure that your employees are aware that all these different threats are out there, and just not to make them completely paranoid like a guy like me, but make them a little bit more aware so they're not gonna step into that pothole. And then I think Jesse's already hit on it, but what's your plan? What's your plan when something happens? And practice that plan. Practice using your backups. Practice, getting ready for that event. It's not if, it's when, as we've said a couple times here this morning. So have that plan in place. Don't store it on your hard drive. I've seen a number of clients who have a great plan. It's stored in their hard drive. Their systems get locked up and they can't get to the plan, right? And have some sort of call tree. These are the 4 people we need And when you're practicing that plan, maybe take one away once in a while. So what are we going to do if our IT person is out of town on that 2-week vacation? If they're camping in the middle of Colorado and we can't get a hold of them, what do we do then? Practicing that plan with some curveballs is, I think, another key.
So I echo everything you guys are saying. I think understanding what you need to do, right? Like if you don't know if you have local admin accounts in your environment, right? Finding out if you do, working with a trusted partner to identify those things. And then also trying to implement, right, similar to the culture that you're trying to have from a business perspective, bringing security into that and building out this culture with security as a focus. Talking about it is probably the biggest thing. The employee education that we keep talking about, that's the non-technical preventative measure. You don't know what you don't know, and the only way you're going to learn that is by potentially phishing schemes that are sent out, and maybe you click the link and then you get assigned to training. And training in a consistent way to make sure that you are learning the ever-evolving landscape that is cybersecurity. And so I think, focusing on that culture mostly though, right? Talking about security, bringing it up in your business meetings and saying, what are our risks, not just from a business perspective, where do we want to be in 5 years and how can security align with that? And bringing that into the conversation now helps rather than reactively when, oh no, we had an incident and now we need to start talking about cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think we hit on a little bit, you guys talked about backups, but we haven't got real deep into backups. And we talked about ransomware being the biggest threat out there. And the biggest way to combat that is good backups. So I think that's key. Having the air gap theory of backups and a 3-2-1, so have 3 copies of your data, 2 different types of media, 1 off-site. And I like to stress that one that's off-site is not on your network. It's not reachable via your network. It's not a digital copy. Maybe it's on tape or something that can be removed from the network. Because obviously in a ransomware event, if they get a hold of your backup server and can track back all your backups, they can also encrypt or erase all your backups, which then just gives them more leverage. So a good backup strategy is the #1 combatant for ransomware.
And these are great points. And I've heard the term training, awareness, education. I always use in my environment education. I mean, it's great to make everybody aware, but really when they're educated as the end user what's going on, that truly you know that they're doing the right thing. We do tabletop exercises throughout the year. In my organization, it's kind of funny, but in December, I take my business continuity management calendar and I plan the whole year out because it's really hard to get the calendars of our CEO, our president, the people on our crisis management team. They're running the show. And so what I do is I call it the Art Baki spam. I think everybody else is calling it that, but I get on the calendars in January so that all of my exercises and all of my things that I do throughout the year with my different teams is already on the calendar. I'm pretty selfish that way. I want business continuity to be #1 in our organization. I'm selfish like that, but it works out if you can get ahead of it, and that helps with the training because, as we've heard too, is when you do tabletop exercises, have your bench sitting there too. So you have your primary people who are the IT manager. The guy's been there forever, knows everything about the organization, but he needs to have a vacation too. And so what happens if he is on vacation and we have an incident? So what we do is we bring up our bench strength and then we make them work the tabletop exercise. So that way, we're building that culture within our organization. So think of that even like in teamwork and in sports. It's always good to have a strong bench. So again, that education to me is really important. So we look here too, and I'm hearing or I'm seeing questions that talk about how often do you train your normal employee, just the person who isn't on the incident response team? And also training your C-suite. How do you train those folks? How often do you fish them? What kind of training do you do?
I think there's several options out there. There's obviously software and applications you can use, like a KnowBe4, that can help with that training. You can create your own customized training. The more frequent you do it, the better. Couple times a year would be great. It really, to me, depends on the size of your organization. If you have 5 employees and you're going to fish them every month, it'll have some impact, but I think it dwindles over time. I think being more random with it and only a subset of employees, so they don't all know about it, because what you'll find out when you start doing phishing tests, as soon as the first guy gets phished, he tells everybody else in the office and no one else gets phished, so you don't get very good responses to that. But the other thing I want to add before I turn over to you guys is the other part of that question, Art, is when you're testing and training or events happen, incidents happen in your network, that employee or those employees can't be given the scarlet letter. It's got to be a positive thing. Thanks for telling us. Thanks for telling us what happened. Because if it's not, there's going to be an incident and they're not going to report it to you. And then you're going to be behind in combating that issue.
Yeah, fear is the big one to overcome with that, right? The shaming and disciplining because they clicked a link is going to do more damage than I think it is good in that situation. From a frequency perspective, right, there's a lot of factors to consider, right? Yearly would be at your minimum, like everybody should go through some form of training at least yearly. We often recommend quarterly. And then every time a new hire comes on board, it has to be one of the first things that they're doing to understand the culture within your organization, and that you are wanting them to understand that this is a risk for us and you need to pay attention to these things.
Yeah, and it's important too, is those new employees, we don't know where we're getting these employees from. What was the culture that they had before? And so security is it's a journey, not a destination. So one of the things when I find out we have a new employee, I want to have the first email in their inbox says, "Welcome to Star Ann Bank." And then I talk about their role specifically within the organization and which threat actors are going to go after you and what they're interested in, and how do you contact us if you see a phishing email that might have a hyperlink or an attachment, suspicious email. We utilize the Department of Homeland Security, See Something, Say Something. It's trademarked by them, but anybody can use it. And we make our own posters, and our folks are not afraid to report phishing emails or anything that looks suspicious, even physically throughout the organization. And we do track that too through our incident response. I track those types of things, man-made, technical, or natural-type things that are happening within the organization. So, yeah, as you said, you've got to train the folks. I train on a monthly basis at least, but then I bring in an outside entity, an outside auditor, to test my education to my employees. Because I could have all these great numbers, but somebody's making sure that I'm honest too and testing my employees. And so I give them free rein. Go out there and harvest is what we call it, harvest email addresses and information about our employees. And I validate that those are people that work at our organization. And then I give them free rein to do whatever you can without any malicious code in the background. But I want to see if they're going to actually click on a link or open an attachment and or submit their credentials into a fraudulent website. So that keeps me honest. This gets reported to the board of directors, and it has the attention of the highest level. And so I'm being looked at upon, how well our education is going in the organization. I'm going to look at, so right now we're in what can we do? And so I'm also seeing things about the workforce of cyber. Oh, we have a question out here. Go ahead.
Art, you mentioned see something, or someone said see something, say something. And what are the best practices if an employee does see something in an email or whatever that's suspicious? What's the best practice for reporting it? Because do you want to forward that to someone else? So that's the question. What is best practice for that?
So if you do have an IT team, they'll ask for that email not to be forwarded, but sent as an attachment. And there are ways to do that within Google or within Outlook. And so you send that because it comes with all the information that we look at called headers that show the traversal through and how it came through, and if there's spoofing email accounts and things along those lines. So the best practice would be to talk to your IT staff on what they need to get that, and they should employ some of those best practices around using that as an attachment, not forwarding it through.
Yeah, a lot of the software that we purchase to test our employees has features that integrate with those email clients, and then they can click on the button and that'll send that email to the IT staff so that they can look at it.
Yeah, I think Know4 has a button, and there's a couple other softwares that you just click a button when you think it's suspicious, and that can go off to your IT team.
Yeah, and if it does get through all the other controls where it gets into employee's inbox, then we can shut it off at the perimeter, at the firewall, so it doesn't come into our environment for other employees, or you can take it out of their inboxes. So that's what IT people, cybersecurity people do. So we've had some questions regarding ransomware, because that is the hot topic. And this one's, I know what the answer is, but it's kind of it depends, but should you pay the ransom?
Cyber insurance guy?
Yeah. So in some cases that we have found that is the best approach, to pay the ransom, get the encryption keys, and test them and get back to work. This may sound just completely crazy, but there's all the insurance companies, most of we know the good actors, the good bad actors, and the bad actors. And the good bad actors oftentimes will pay and get that business back up and running. It galls you. It feels very wrong, but from the long-term viability of your business, it sometimes is the best approach. I just want to circle back on this a little bit. Like when we have an event, one thing that we haven't really touched on, but there's certain, you also have regulatory concerns with this stuff, right? We talked about OFAC, but also like when do we need to notify? How do we need to notify? There's a lot of different state laws, those type of things. Just within your teams, you want to kind of keep that communication. Like I was thinking about this when we were talking about that bad email, but communication with your team kind of tight. And maybe not a lot of, you want to get under attorney-client privilege as soon as possible. You want to get the experts in the room as soon as possible, as they can help you get through that event. If you start throwing terms around like breach, or that could probably trigger some regulatory involvement, that's not always the best thing for your organization. So, getting back to the start of the story, sometimes we pay, sometimes we don't, but it emphasizes the importance of getting the right legal, the right forensic team in there as soon as possible to determine what happened to whom and over what time period, and move on.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty polarized subject even within the cybersecurity community is do you pay? Oftentimes, right, the more experienced cybersecurity professionals will say no, asterisk, right? They'll put an asterisk on there and then in small text at the bottom they'll say, but you have to do what's best for your organization. Right, it comes down to, right, if you continue to fund ransomware, it'll continue to work, and that's the concept that people like to talk about within the cybersecurity community. And so, right, back to what Dan was saying, it's you got to do what's best for your organization, right? If you can pull from backups and you can recover effectively, do you need to pay the ransom? Does it make sense financially? There's a ton of questions that you can't just give a 1 or a 0 on the answer on that one.
And I think there's an audience. Is that audience input around the U.S. Department of Treasury, the OFAC advisory we talked about earlier, where you can't pay into certain countries? You can pay. If I was, I'm not asking you to, but if I were to, hold you up for a ransomware, I'm sitting in, Woodbury, Minnesota. You can pay me, right? I'm not. I'm a bad actor, but I'm not a government that we're adverse to, that we can't pay money into a terrorist. You can't fund the terrorist, right? I'm not a terrorist. I'm a bad actor. I'm not a terrorist. There's certain countries, certain organizations you cannot, you cannot fund right now. It's an illegal act to fund it. So insurance would not respond to that, nor, legally should you pay that ransom. But there are certain ransoms that, they are legal to pay right now. Does that make sense?
So let's move a little bit. I've got some technical questions here, but we're running down on time for this particular panel. So what are some resources available to us? So we're here, we want to know, we've learned some new things, we're not all IT people. What are some resources that we should leverage in order to help us be successful?
So there was an executive order that came out for cybersecurity immediately after the Colonial Pipeline attack that outlines some general best practices from the federal government perspective. I think CISA also has some good self-assessments that can be taken to understand where you might lie. And outside of that, working with your trusted partners to understand what strategy needs to be employed, what plans need to be in place, where your gaps exist, and where your security weaknesses are to come out of that.
So thinking of government resources, the different sectors, we have our own ISACs, Information Sharing and Analysis Center, so ISAC. I have the Financial Services ISAC, so if you are in the financial services industry, you should become a member of that. There's a multi-states ISAC, which is for state government. There are ISACs for energy, ISACs for real estate. You should be in tune, because this is your threat intelligence. Someone should be following these types of channels. You should know who Mr. John Bonnage is. You will get to meet him later this morning, but he's with the FBI. You should know that person. You should know that person. You should know how to get a hold of that person, because he's going to help you get a hold of the people that are going to help you. You should also know who your county emergency manager is. Okay? It's not just cyber all the time. We have floods here in the valley. You should take that person out for lunch or go to lunch with that person. You should know your State Department Emergency Services people. You should know those people. These are resources. They're hungry to know you. Their job is to get out and see you and to talk to you and get to know you. So reach out to them. That's their job. Please do. So those are resources that I use. Are there any other resources that you can think of?
Circle back to insurance. If you have an insurance policy, there's all kinds of resources within that insurance policy that you can access. Instant response plans, access to different networks to test your system from an open port perspective, those type of things. They're free, right? And they're free because the insurance company wants you to institute them, because that's going to make you a better risk, and they're going to pay less dollars, right? I mean, they're doing it for a reason, but if it's out there, I would use it. And I know iBailey had resources, we have resources. I'm sure you have resources that your clients can access to utilize. And oftentimes those, again, are free, because it makes our life easier if you're using them. So go out and see what's out there and see if it can help your organization.
Yeah, one of the resources we use at our financial institution is the FFIEC cybersecurity assessment tool. We call it the CAT. And this CAT tests our cyber maturity and helps us to move along. And that CAT is always communicated to the board of directors on a quarterly basis, and the executive management team are on board with that. And even our employees, as I sit with our employees and talk about where we're at with cybersecurity maturity, they know. And again, that's training, that's culture, and it's so important. One of the questions, and we're winding down here, but this is a little bit more technical. MFA for just admins or MFA for all employees?
MFA for all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they have access to your network, make them sign in twice.
Yeah, and I think I'd agree with that, because the big challenge that we have is cloud-based email. We haven't really talked about business email compromise, but certainly that's right behind ransomware, running a close number 2 from a threat perspective. That's available anywhere. They don't have to get through your firewalls or anything to access your email. And whether you believe it or not, there's all sorts of valuable information in your email when they start sorting through your email. Depending on your security posture, and it might have been security posture years ago and you haven't changed passwords and you were emailing passwords around inside your environment, and now they have, because no one deletes their email, right? So they can go back X amount of years, right, and find all that data about the company and passwords and other interesting information in email. So yeah, for everybody.
Okay, that's okay. So yeah, business email compromise is the fancy term for someone clicking on something they shouldn't, people getting through. And we call it the weakest link. It's the human firewall. And that's the, that's the person sitting behind the desk. We can spend all kinds of money as information technology, cybersecurity people, small businesses, medium, large businesses on firewalls and appliances and anti-malware and all these cool gizmos and gadgets, but really at the end of the day, the human firewall is the weakest link. And again, we need to educate them to the highest level as we can.
Yeah, I think the statistic around that is that 95% of cyber attacks are due to human error, right? Some form of error that is existing with either clicking the link or downloading the document, failure to configure correctly, things along those lines. And so, right, we can't implement a technical solution for every human error possible.
And then the last question, we're at about 2 minutes, but the workforce issue seems to span all industries and technology. Cybersecurity, et cetera, is no different. How do we get more people interested in this field, and what are the current barriers? And I'm gonna field this one real quick. It's the reason why I teach at the college too, just for something to do, is because there's a lot of information that's up in these brains right here, and our next generation needs that knowledge in order to protect our way of life, our water, the fuel that's coming to our vehicles, our heating fuel for the natural gas and that in the wintertime here in North Dakota, the energy. It's helping to find those young people and inspiring them to get into this field, and again, giving that knowledge. What are some thoughts? And actually, we talked about a statistic last night. Was there are how many jobs available in cybersecurity, and how many jobs are
3 million and only 1.5 million to fill them at this point, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that one, please. But it's somewhere up there. That's about, there's 50% of the jobs are left unfilled, and I think the talent exists out there, right? The generation that's growing up in elementary school, even my son can program, he can use computers, he can build computers, and he's 7, right? The talent exists out there. It's the interest that we need to garner within cybersecurity and really start bringing that up. And so, doing internships, doing mentoring is a vital practice for cybersecurity experts nowadays. If we're not having people come under our wing and learn what we're doing and how we're doing it, we're going to fail.
All right, with that, so we'd like to thank our panelists for their generosity to answer our questions and to give us some insight on what is the threat landscape, the challenges, and some quick takeaways. We're going to be here even on break. Feel free to reach out to us and ask us some questions here, and we're gonna move into our next person here, and this is Peter, and we have Peter is director of incident response and Blue Team Alpha, and we're going to show what happens in a real world cyber attack and how you can improve your security posture. So again, thank you folks for being up here. And then Peter, if you can come up and speak from your perspective of incident response. And then I'm still going to moderate the questions. And so I might be the peanut gallery, the guy who stands up within the crowd to ask the question. So you can still use that email address, and then I'll ask to Peter.
It's good you're moderating because I need it. You'll figure out why in a minute. Nope, back up. Go back to John's. John Mess was supposed to be up here with me. I apologize. He was in a horrible, horrible jackalope incident last night and could not be with us this morning. He's doing well. His family appreciates all the prayers and well wishes. So, but I'm going to cover his slides for him. I'm going to do the best that I can here. So bear with me as we get through these. This is John. He's a senior security advisor for NCI. He's got lots of years in technology. I've known him for a couple of years through a couple of different companies. Who they are, founded in '86. They're employee owned. Core vision, commitment to employees, dedication to customer service. My bifocals aren't working. Responsible innovations. You can't see this, but on the monitor down here, they just stretched it and made it bigger. Thank you. It was fantastic. Cracked me up. Preventative defensive strategy, right? That's what NCI is about. That's what advisory is about. We want to put a plan in place so that you're prepared when you have an incident. I saw hands when they asked the questions earlier, who's had an incident? There were a few hands that went up. Who hasn't had an incident? Show hands. Who hasn't had an incident? Oh, wise choice. Nobody raised their hand. Because my second question is prove it, right? You either have one or you don't know that you've had one. Where does it all start? Training camps, baselines, right? Where are you at today? You do not have to be at enterprise level of security tomorrow. Where are you today? What do you have? What's your risk look like? Do you know how to do a risk assessment on yourself? If you don't, security partners like NCI will help you. They will give you a report. The report is your playbook, right? This is what we're going to do to bring you up to speed, right? We're going to cross the T's, we're going to dot the I's, we're going to do the basics, right? We're going to turn multi-factor on, as Dan said. Multi-factor is important. We're going to turn multi-factor on. We're going to make sure your firewall's on. We're going to make sure that your firewall isn't sitting in the default setting with any. And the technical people are going, yes, it's important. C-level influence, coaching. I need help with my C-level, right? Form a steering committee. Get executive buy-in. If you're a C-suite, security starts with you and goes downhill. You don't get exempt from phishing. You don't get exempt from MFA. You should be the first one in line. And if you're not, you're part of the problem. You may not like me for saying that, but it's true. Corporate culture, right? They touched on that a little bit with security awareness. Be positive. Make a game out of it. I used to work for Self-Esteem Brands, which is the franchise owner for Anytime Fitness, right? Stores all over the place. We would phish continuously. And when you first reported a phishing email correctly with the little report phishing button, and it would pop up and say, this was a phishing test, you did this correctly, we would give away a t-shirt. And the t-shirt had Admiral Akbar on it, and it said, it's a trap across the top, coveted. People would click that button and be at the help desk within minutes going, where's my t-shirt? You have to make it fun, right? A lot of things aren't fun. Policies and procedures, not a lot of fun, but they're necessary, right? So everybody knows what their role is. And security is fun. Make a game out of it. Don't crucify somebody for making a mistake. Use them as a teaching example. We had a finance individual in the finance department that wanted to change his EA account. EA is Electronic Arts. He's a gamer. So he goes online, tries to change his password for his EA account because he forgot it, can't do it, looks for their support number, finds it, calls them, gets a help center. They say, sure, we can help you. I need access to your computer to see what's going on because it may be something with your browser. It's a bad idea, but he gives them access to the computer, goes to the website, they remote into his computer, and they say, okay, we can help you, but we're going to need you to go to Target and get a gift card. Whoops. Realizes that he's in trouble, hangs up the phone, disconnects his laptop, powers it off, picks it up, brings it down to me at my desk, and says, I screwed up. Okay, what'd you do? So he tells me, all right. I pick up the phone. Well, actually, we all sat together with the IT department. We kill all of his accounts, lock him down, cleared everything up, made sure we didn't have a bad threat actor in the network. Good to go. His boss calls me, CFO. Do I have grounds to fire him? Yeah, probably. Should I fire him? No. Because he made a mistake? People make mistakes. He did the right thing. He came down to me immediately. And we can use this as a teaching opportunity. The next time we had a full staff meeting, we talked about it. Right? We didn't crucify him. Because, as they said, if you crucify him, the next guy that screws up is not going to tell you about it. And now you got a whole big mess on your hands. Your players are your employees. Training and awareness. A phishing test once a year is not going to help you. It's not going to help them. You have to do it all the time. They have to know that they are part of the security team. They're the first line of defense. I can put all the technology in the world. If Bob in accounting clicks on the link, you're done. Game over. There is no off season. Security is constant. I had a security analyst ask me one time that we had brought on, and he was a fairly new guy, and he said, when are we done? I said, what do you mean? He goes, when are we done? You know, the IT department, you know, the sysadmins, they put a new server in, they stand it up, they hand it off to the person that needs to use it. That project is done. When are we done? I'm like, we don't do done. Ever. 24/7, we're always on. Security is a journey. Don't expect to get there. You know, you can't expect to be an Olympic player if you never started when you were 3, right? And that's okay. There's a mindset that I run into a lot of, we have the worst security network in the world out of anybody, and we don't want to tell anybody about it because it's so bad. I will guarantee you I've seen worse than what your network looks like. So contact your security partner. If you don't have a security partner, find one. If you don't know how to find one, ask one of us. For one, we can be your security partner. And 2, we know lots of other people if we can't, right? Do phishing contests. It's fun. Give stuff away. You go to security conferences, there's stuff on all these tables, right? There's notebooks and pens and stuff like that. We had a box of stuff from security conferences. And if you won the phishing contest, you got to pick out of there. Sometimes it's really cool. It had laser pointers and all kinds of fun stuff. Black Hat's a great place to go to get swag to give away. And you can get a whole new wardrobe in a day. So make it fun. Security's fun. Constant improvement, again, it doesn't end. You wrote your policies and procedures, you have to revisit those at least once a year. You're probably going to do that with your security committee on a quarterly basis. Do we need to make changes? Have we had an incident? Did that affect our policies? You have to look at that. You have to go through those steps. Security committee should be way more than just the security team or the IT team. It needs to be people from HR. It needs to be legal. It needs to be development, especially development. How many devs in the audience? Any developers? Nobody wants to raise their hand? Fine. I get you, I understand. IT is the developers because they don't want anybody messing with their stuff, especially the security guy going, you can't do that. So you want those people in place on your security committee so they're helping set the rules for your company. Physical security, you know, do you have locks on your doors? I'm from Minnesota. Actually, I grew up in Williston, North Dakota, so I'm a North Dakota kid. But I currently live in Minnesota, and they have a thing called Minnesota Nice. If you walk up to a door with a box in your hands and it's 30 below, people will hold the door for you, whether you work there or not, right in the employee entrance. Whoops. Now that I'm in the building, all I got to do is find a live network port and plug some tools in, and you have a problem on your hand. We do physical security assessments too, so it's fun stuff. Internal and external technical. What's my external footprint look like? What's my website look like? Is it configured correctly? Things happen, you get misconfigured, you get a call from somebody in Texas saying, hey, I'm getting spam off of your server. Not that I would know anything about that. What happens if you get sacked? Oh, hey, it's me. What happens if you get sacked, right? We did everything we were supposed to do. We had security partner, we put all of our stuff in place, we had policies and procedures, we trained our employees, everything's good to go. So who am I? I keep looking up there for that, and it's not there. It's weird seeing myself. Incident response. This is what I do. I work for a company called Blue Team Alpha. We are partnered with NCI. And it's my face that you see on your worst day. It's my thought too. So what do? What does Blue Team Alpha do? We're full service, but our specialty is incident response. And we take companies that are experiencing ransomware and we stand them back up, right? Because ransomware is just the tip of the iceberg for the whole process. So I'll walk you through what happens. We'll tell some war stories. I'm gonna have to have a lot of war stories. I have a lot of time. So process, discovery, what's going on? These are the steps we follow. You can find this on NIST. This is a pretty standard response, right? Discovery, identification and analysis, containment, that's a big one. Contain the threat, eradication, and then recovery. So who are we? Who's on the team? We have certified incident handlers, which is good. That's what I do. I'm an incident commander, they call me. So I'm the guy that leads and the incident response. I'm the guy that puts the people in place from my side and also works with the client to first off calm them down because they're having a really bad day and start us down the process. We have certified penetration testers that also help inform us and help us practice in what we do. We have certified information system security professionals, CISSPs. I have one of those. Anyone that says CISP, we're going to have words later. We have experience working with the Department of Defense, former chief security officers, chief information security officers, former and current information system and intelligence military personnel, our CISO, however you want to pronounce it. I'm pretty sure he was a CIA spook, but he won't tell me one way or the other. Can't imagine why. Department of Defense prime contractor, CISOs, and analysts. So we can do CMMC. I'm a CMMC RP, CISSP. We can work anything from Department of Defense down to mom and pop shops. Most of what I do is small to medium-sized businesses. Enterprise businesses have really big budgets. They have full IR teams or full security teams. They've got the tools, the training, and the budget to support them. Most small to medium-sized businesses do not. It's not their focus, right? Trying to keep doors open, employees paid, bills paid. It's a different world. My dad was a small business owner who owned a floor covering store. He didn't know anything about computers, right? Still a threat. Parallel processes, technologies, cutting edge endpoint protection, monitoring and during investigations. I'm going to go skip through some of these and then I'll give you examples. Team of experienced security engineers, rapid on-site recovery and on-site support increases client satisfaction. This is something that we figured out a long time ago. Putting somebody on site and having a physical presence at their location does wonders for their mental health and their ability to function in that environment. Because like I said, it's your worst day. Reporting and lessons learned. We do final reports. We circle back around with the client, what could have gone better, what didn't go better. We do that internally as well, that constant process improvement. Not sure if you're under attack. So what is an incident? It's a big question, and it's got a lot of different answers to it. I clicked an email. Is that an incident? I tried to open the Excel file in the email. Is that an incident? Sure is. Is it an incident where you're going to need my help? Maybe, maybe not. But you need to report it, right? That's not right. Excel usually opens. Report that. Talk to your IT team. This didn't work. It's an incident. The big ones, business email compromise, moving money, right? You're at work, one of your vendors calls you and says, hey, you didn't pay your bill. Sure did, last week. You sent me the email with all the information in it, and I did an ACH transfer to the banking account you told me. Didn't get it. That's odd. Pull it up. This is the account you told me? You know, you sent it to me, and then you sent me another one that said, this is the account number. You changed banks. We didn't change banks. If you call me fast enough, we can probably get some of that money back. Business email compromise. Suspicious, unexpected vendor account changes. Multiple failed logins attempts. The IT team is looking at it and they notice that one account is getting thousands of failed login attempts. That's probably something you should look at, right? That's an incident. Is it something you did? Probably not, but something out there is triggering that. So you want to look at that and make sure that that account's okay. Abnormal remote login sessions. Multiple failed login attempts, brute force, people just trying random passwords. Remote login sessions. You cannot get from San Diego to New York in 15 minutes. But yet the login to your email says that you logged in San Diego, and 15 minutes later you logged in from New York. That's an incident, right? O365 will actually flag that and tell you that's impossible. You can't be in those two places at the same time. Is anybody here from Microsoft? I see a table over there from them. O365's got really good security built into it. They don't turn it on by default. So if you manage O365, go turn your security on, especially your logging, so I have something to look at. It makes my life much easier. Logins from unfamiliar domains. Hey, we got to log into the website from Iran. That's kind of unusual. How'd that happen? Why are they logging in? Files that won't open. Phishing will spike. Get lots of weird phishing messages. Your O365 may or may not respond to that. Your local exchange may or may not respond to that. Duplicate invoice complaints, right? And I think that's the end of my slides, which is good. Okay, so let's talk incident response. Really what they told me when they said, hey, will you come present? We want you to tell war stories. So I'll tell some war stories. There are two big ones that we deal with almost on a daily basis. I currently have 7 active incident responses going, right? Where we're responding to 7 different companies. And that's in the last week. And we're just a small player. But they come in 2 main forms. One is business email compromise, and the other one is ransomware. All right, heard about both of them, so I'll tell you what it looks like. Business email compromise. Somebody at some point in your organization gets an email and it says, hey, I need you to review this document. And it came from a vendor or a friend or somebody from upstairs. And they get these kind of requests all the time, and they open it up, and it says, hey, you need to log into your Microsoft account to view this. That happens, right? Microsoft makes you log in again every now and then. So they put their credentials in. Nothing happens. That's weird. Try it again. No, nothing happens. Don't think anything about it. Sometimes Microsoft has trouble, right? Or Google or whomever, you know. I'm going to pick on Microsoft because they're not here. Several weeks later, somebody in finance gets an email that says, from their CEO who's traveling overseas, and this is an actual case, we had this happen, gets an email from their CEO who is in Europe someplace, Liechtenstein or someplace, and he says, hey, I need you to transfer, I think the first one was $250,000 to this company, and here's their ACH information. I'm headed into meetings. I'm not going to be able to respond back. The deal's going to fall through if we don't get this done. Get it done. It's not an unusual request from the CEO to their finance person. She's done this before, so she did it. A couple hours later, she gets an email and said, hey, that transfer didn't go through. Do it again. $750,000 goes out the door. So finally, they get a hold of the CEO. She calls him. What's going on? I sent all that money. You keep saying it didn't go through. What's going on? Is there a problem on their side? And he says, what are you talking about? I didn't tell you to send anything. So here's what happens on the back end. When they put whoever it was that put their credentials into Microsoft, the threat actor then logs in. And the first time he does it is probably going to be through a VPN. It's going to look like it came from New York or San Diego or Florida or one of the big data centers, right? Las Vegas, lots of big data centers in Vegas. And he's going to look and see what kind of rights he has. And he's going to start watching email, right? See who the IT teams are, that kind of stuff. And he's going to continue to fish if he doesn't have admin rights in O365. He's going to watch and he's going to fish and he's going to learn. So eventually he's going to get somebody that does have admin rights or the ability to set up rules in O365, which you can do on the web. You can set up a rule to forward email to a different account. Don't send it to your Gmail account. Your security team isn't going to like that. But they'll set it up. And he sets it up to send email to himself, right? It's just a copy. It's not on your local machine. There's no indication on your side that your email is going outside of the network to somebody else to look at. None. You don't have any idea. And he sits and he watches and he waits and he learns until he finds out that this is how payments get made. If I talk to Nancy in finance and I impersonate her boss, the CEO, who's made these requests before, I got a pretty good chance that she's going to send me money. So I'm watching that account. But the CEO is also going overseas, and he shared his itinerary with certain people in the business that need to know, like, Nancy, where are you going to be? Who am I talking to? This is my schedule, full itinerary. So the threat actor knows everything about where he's going to be, and he knows everything about their payment process. Waits to tell the guys in meetings. Then he sends an impersonated email. Or if he has the rights, he'll send an email from the boss's account itself to Nancy and say, hey, I need you to send me these funds. It's not unusual. So she does. Now we're back to the phone call. I didn't authorize anything. Oh, now what do? If you have a security team, you go talk to them. If you don't have a security team, go talk to your IT team, right? Tell your CFO. Who will probably have the cyber insurance policy. And hopefully he's read it and he knows who to call right? Which is Dan. You call Dan, and Dan gets the ball rolling from his side. They get an IR team on it, and that's when I get involved. At that point, when I'm involved, we'll take a look at it. We'll go into your O365. We'll remove all the rules. We'll kick the bad guy out. We'll change the passwords. We'll insist that you turn multi-factor on. If you don't have multi-factor on in O365 today, when you leave here, go back to your office and set it up. It's not that painful. People will squawk. Your C-level may squawk. Tell them to call me. We'll talk. Turn it on. And multi-factor is available for everything, just about everything. Facebook has multi-factor. Turn that on. Gmail has multi-factor. Turn that on. Your banks all require multi-factor. Make sure it's working. Most places do these days. Use it. So we go into O365. We kick the bad guy out. We run some really cool tools in the background that tells us, yep, it was Dave, the developer, and he clicked this, or whoever it was. And they've probably been in your environment for 3 months, 4 months, if not longer. I've seen them in the environment for a year, year and a half, from the initial time that they were breached until they actually did something. We also have teams that we work with that can claw that money back, right? They work with the banking systems. They work with the FBI. They work with the Department of Defense. They work with the Secret Service, who's actually responsible for that, of all things. I thought that was interesting. Secret Service does business email compromises. All right. And we get most of the money back. In that case, we got everything but $50,000 back. It's not bad. $750,000 to $50,000. They're still out $50,000, right? Multi-factor would have saved their butts. And it happens over and over again. If they can't get into your email, if they figure out who your vendors are, they can impersonate a vendor, that man-in-the-middle attack. Anytime you get a request from a vendor or anybody that you do business with, whether you're buying or selling to them, and they send you something that says, hey, can you send me an ACH transfer? Even though they do it once a month and you've known them for 15 years, pick up the phone and call them and say, is this valid? Right? Person-to-person contact. It's the best way to prevent money walking out the door in a business email compromise. Questions about business email compromises? Sure.
I got an email and I was out of town and I got it from Seth, but not really Seth. And it said, hey, can you send me your cell phone number? Why would they want my cell phone number?
Why would they want your cell phone number? They want your cell phone number because they're going to try and imitate you or impersonate you with the cell phone company and get your phone number changed to a different carrier and a different SIM, which is on their phone. And then they're going to use that because your two-factor runs off of your phone, right? They're going to use that and try to reset all your passwords. And if they have your phone, that's where all those email requests go, right? They've got access to your email account. So that's why they're asking. There's a specific term for that, and I can't think of it. I will when I'm driving back to the cities and go, oh, that's it. Because that's the way that works. Other questions about business email? Yeah. The question was, is it a bad idea to keep your phone number in your email signature? You know, if you have two-factor set up with your cell phone company, no. Right? And most cell phone companies they've cottoned onto this, right? Onto the fraud side of it. And they ask some pretty interesting questions. You know, who are you? What's your firstborn child's name? Where do you live? What's your social security number? That kind of stuff, right? Validating who you are, things that only you should know. How many people are on Facebook? You ever see those surveys? You know, the ones that come up and say, I bet you can't answer these 10 questions, or, you know, really good moms remember all of this, and it says things like, where was your first child born? What time of day? What hospital? What county? Right? And the good moms are all like, oh, I know all of this. I'll put all this in. I'll show up all those other bad moms. I have a cousin that did that. And I called her up and I said, what are you doing? She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, you just gave your daughter's identity away. I know where they were born. I know on what day. I know what hospital. I know what doctor. I know your name. I can now send a request to the state and get a copy of their birth certificate because I have all of the pertinent information that the state requires on Facebook. That's open to anybody. And your kid's 16, they're probably not going to know that their identity's been stolen, their credit's trashed until they turn 18, right? Apply for their first credit card when they go to college. Thanks a lot, NDSU, for years of debt. Wasn't their fault. Be careful what you send out there, right? Information's important, and it's easy to get. Anybody do a dark web search for themselves? Yeah? Did you show up? Yeah, I do too. You can search by your email address, right? Your main email address. It'll tell you if you've been part of a breach. You have. I'll guarantee it. Your information's already out there, right? People ask me, how do you sleep at night? Well, first off, I know my information's already out there. I know my social security number is floating around the dark web. I know all that. So how do I sleep at night? I sleep like a baby. I wake up crying every 3 hours. Is the guy with the camera really sick of me wandering back and forth across the stage yet? I apologize. Okay, so that's business email. Any other questions about a business email compromise? Was that a scratch my beard or scratch? Okay. Good, okay, let's talk about ransomware. Ransomware is a little different. Let me set the scene for you. A manufacturing and distribution company located in the United States, headquarters in city to be unknown, 3 locations in the United States. They've got 450 employees. They've got probably 30 servers and 500-600 desktops, endpoints. 2 o'clock in the morning, their sysadmin gets an alert on his phone that his servers are dropping offline. Well, that's no good. There must be a problem. So he VPNs in to his network, and yep, he's got servers online. They're not coming back up. All right, well, I'll just restore the servers from backup, right? Get a jump on this for in the morning. He goes to his Veeam server, and there's an account logged into his Veeam server with admin rights that he does not recognize. That's not one of our admin accounts. That's not our naming convention. And whoever that is deleting his restore points off of his Veeam server. That's bad. So now he knows he's in trouble. So he heads into the office. By the time he gets to the office, his domain controllers are encrypted. His backup server, because threat actors are real jerks, they've deleted his backup points off of his Veeam server and then encrypted his server. You know, just because one wasn't good enough. And his desktops are encrypting across the company. That's really not good. So he's alerted the C-level. The finance officer is the first one there. She lived relatively close. She comes in, how bad is it? He's going through and everything. Their entire server stack is encrypted. Their desktops are encrypted. His laptop wasn't because it wasn't online, right? So he can see into the network. At which point in time, his nerves got the better of him and he turned around and threw up in his garbage can. Their CFO said that was the first for her. I don't blame him or her. So they realize they have a problem, right? And it's now 7 o'clock in the morning. It is inevitable that threat actors start and you notice it Friday morning. And I know this because I get a call at 4 o'clock Friday afternoon like clockwork every week. We have a problem. Okay, I'm working the weekend. Got it. My guys are working the weekend. So we get the call. Now we have to respond. So what do we do? Two-pronged attack. I have threat hunters and I have infrastructure guys. Lots of knowledge on both sides. My infrastructure guys have been in the business, I think between the two of them, they got like 50 years. My threat hunters are relatively young, 24, 25 years old, and incredibly smart. They're really good at what they do. My threat hunters are the first piece. We get admin rights to your network. We log in either through VPN or direct. If you have RDP open to the internet, shame on you, and go back to your business and change that right now. You can use RDP, do it through VPN, not open to the internet. So my threat hunters get access. First thing they're going to do is lock down your firewall. They're probably going to kick everybody off the network that's there, if anybody's even there, because everything's encrypted, in this case. And they're going to look for the holes, right? RDP was open to the internet. We closed that hole. We lock down the internet. We've got a VPN tunnel set up to where the only thing that can get through is my guys. And then they start threat hunting. They start looking for additional indicators of compromise. They're looking for persistence mechanisms, right? Because the bad guy wants to get back in. He realizes that IT is going to go, hey, this isn't right, and cut him off in one spot, so he's going to have something else going on in the back end. They look for that. While they're doing that, I have a guy on an airplane with a go bag. I call it a network in a box. And he's got switches and NAS and operating systems and lots of USB drives and everything that he needs, fiber channel, all that kind of good stuff. Everything that he needs, and we're flying him to your location. And when he gets there, we're going to set him up in a room, and we're going to build a small network, and we're going to start building your network back up. Right? So that's pretty easy to do with desktops. We just re-image them. If people were keeping information on their desktop, they weren't supposed to do that anyway. I'm pretty sure it's in your security policies, because we have those, that says what we use our data for and where we keep it, which is on the server, so it can get backed up, right? So you can start bringing those back up. Now, we're encrypted. They want, I think at the time they wanted 6 Bitcoins, and they weren't anywhere close to what their value is today. It was probably $30,000 at the time. I think now they're what, 500-600 or $5,000, something like that. It's a lot. So it was about $30K that they wanted to unlock it. Well, do we pay it? That's not my decision, that's a business decision, right? I work in information security, I identify risk, I do not accept it, and I do not make business decisions. I inform. That's my job. So they're mulling over whether or not to pay it. And there's a misconception that if you pay the ransom and get the decryption key, your network unencrypts and everything just goes back to normal. Nope. Your data will decrypt. Anybody ever tried to restore a domain controller? I'm here laughing in the room. Yeah, it didn't work out well, did it? They don't like that at all. Try encrypting one and then trying to bring it back. No, start from scratch. You can restore them, but it's a pain in the butt. So they're deciding that, and in the meantime, we're looking around, and we are desperately looking for a backup, any type of a backup. In this case, they had a NAS device that did a weekly snapshot of itself, and it had been put in by somebody else who had left and failed to inform them of that, and when we found the NAS device, we found the backups they didn't even know they had, the snapshot, so we can restore their servers. So my guy is rebuilding the servers on site, and my threat hunters are kicking the bad guy out. We started Friday, and by Monday, we had them limping. By Tuesday, as far as their clients knew, they were back to normal. They knew there was a problem on Monday with their servers. Tuesday, they were back to normal as far as the client was concerned, and by Wednesday, they were 90% whole internally. So in 5 days, I had them back up and running. That's that whole speed to recovery, right? Not if, when. And when it happens, how fast can you get back up on your feet? That's important. Think about the business that you do. If you're down for, what was the 23 days is currently what the stat is? If your clients can't get your product for 23 days, are they going to wait? Or are they going to go to a competitor? Because they got to run their business too, right? Can they wait 23 days for an order that you may or may not be able to provide and you can't really tell them? No, they're going to go someplace else. So it's not really the impact. One, everything was, you didn't have access to your systems, but the impact goes beyond that, because I can stand you back up on your feet, and we want to do that as fast as possible so you don't use your customer base. Because the reason that 60% of companies, small to medium-sized businesses, go out of business for a ransomware attack is because their clients leave and their revenue goes away. Hard to do business without clients, right? So that's why you get to see my face on your worst day. It's a blessing and a curse, I know. I got one smile over here. He's like, yeah, you're right. So that's a business email, or that's a ransomware, right? In addition to that, with the ransomware, we almost without fail will contact the threat actor. And there's a couple reasons for that. In a ransomware case, they don't just show up and encrypt your data. They've been in your network for weeks, months, years, and they've copied everything off of your network that they can get. Databases, Excel spreadsheets, emails, everything off your servers, Christmas card lists, bonuses, HR data, social security numbers, because they're there somewhere, trust me. My pen testers will find them. All of that information's out the door. And then they come in and salt the earth. That's when they encrypt you. They do it for a couple of reasons. One, they want to extort money out of you for the data that they've stolen. And the second one is to cover their tracks. Delete all the logs, encrypt all the drives. Now I've got nothing to track them back on. So we will contact them and make them prove that A, they have your data, and what type of data do they have? Because if they've got pricing information that's just your online catalog and that's the only thing that they took, competitors know what that is anyway, right? That's probably not going to be worth paying. Social security numbers. End of the world, do we pay them? Maybe. It may be cheaper just to buy, monitoring for your employees and apologize really well for losing their data. Do they have your entire client database with their social security numbers and all that good stuff? Different story, but we'll tell you what that is. Do you pay them? Business decision, right? Inform the CEO, inform the CFO, let that happen. And it's always interesting, and I hear this from IT teams over and over again, complaints about their CFO that, we didn't have money in the budget for what we wanted to do to help prevent this, but the ransomware attack hits and all of a sudden the coffers are open, right? It's really frustrating on my part to hear that. I don't know what to tell them. And I'm not cheap. My teams aren't cheap. That's why you need a good cyber insurance plan that will cover ransomware payments, and cover services to get you back up and on your feet. Some of them only cover the incident and the forensics, right? Kick the bad guy out, tell me how they got in. They do nothing for the rest of it. And I'm expensive. My team is $400 an hour. Any lawyers in here? Yeah? No? No lawyers? It's expensive, right? It's another reason you don't want to see my face on the worst day. But we'll get you back. We'll get you back on your feet. That's my job. That's what I do. And we do it quickly, right? Speed to recover. We don't want your client base going away. That's bad. So that's ransomware. Questions there? Everybody like, who is this guy, right? My friends and family tell me that I can talk about the people I work with and the company I work for, but they don't want to know what I do on a daily basis because I don't sleep well. It's a big, scary world. Yes, sir.
Just speaking for the small and medium-sized businesses, how do they get a hold of Bitcoin to pay the ransom?
Yeah, that's a good question. Who has a Bitcoin account? It's a bunch of IT guys back there, I'll guarantee you. Yep. Yep, here too. As a business owner, maybe you're the CEO, maybe you're the CFO, do you have one? Do you know how to buy Bitcoin? Do you have the capacity to convert a couple $100,000 into Bitcoin? I do. I know how to do that. And it's a shame that I do, because we don't like to pay bad guys. And our friend from the FBI is going to stand up here and tell you, don't pay the bad guy, right? I'm going to say the same thing, but it comes down to a business decision. If you don't have backups, if you don't have good backups, if you do not have offline air-gapped backups, write that down, offline air-gapped backups. And you get ransomware, you're screwed. I can do nothing for you other than rebuild your infrastructure, and you get to start your accounting data over from scratch. Hope you printed out those quarterly reports. Might help. Oh, and print out, like they said earlier, print out your IR plan, put it in a folder on your desk. Take a copy home on a USB drive for your incident response plan. It does no good at all if your incident response plan is encrypted. We get that a lot. Where's your incident response plan? Oh, it's on our file server. No. Good spot. Now make a printed copy. I just lost my train of thought. Backups. That's what I was talking about, backups. Who still uses tape? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. There's still some tape users. That's good. That works. That's an offline, air-gapped backup, right? We want to make sure that there's an air gap there, that there's no technical way that a hacker can get his hands on that, right? If we have to call Iron Mountain at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell them, send me my backups, they will do that. They're going to charge us through the nose, but they'll do it. And we don't really care at that point because our entire business is locked up and we're screwed. They'll do it. A lot of companies don't do that anymore because it's a hassle and it's really fast to push it to the cloud. Right? I have Veeam in the cloud. I pick on Veeam because I see Veeam a lot. There's other solutions out there as well. I can push those backups to the cloud. They happen automatically. Yeah, great. If you can get to them, so can the threat actor. It's going to be one of the first things he looks for, because without backups, you have to pay him.
We have a question from online, someone watching us from the virtual environment, and they ask, will having the whole environment, your server VMs and VDI, on Azure or Amazon Web Services protect you from ransomware encrypting the whole environment?
No. No, it will not. AWS and Azure are hosting providers, right? They're a cloud provider. They are responsible for the security of their infrastructure. so that they do not get ransomware and lock out all of their clients. That is where their responsibility ends. Read the terms of service. Anything inside of that container which you rent from them is your responsibility. And if you leave it open to the internet and it gets ransomware, they're going to tell you, call Pete, because I can't do anything for you. Did everybody know that? No? He did. He's like, damn straight. Yeah, just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean it's safe. Doesn't mean it's backed up. Doesn't mean you're not responsible for it. It's your data. You're responsible for it. Even if somebody says, we will take responsibility for you, it's still your data. You're still responsible for it. Read the fine print. When you talk to Dan and you get a cyber insurance policy, read it. Understand it. Know what's covered and what's not. Know how to get a hold of him, right? Know who your security partner is. If you don't have a security partner to help you with this, you need to get one, right? And it doesn't have to be a big contract. It doesn't have to be anything massive. Sometimes it's just a phone call to introduce yourself so they know who you are when you call them. Right? If you do have an incident, if you do have a question, we have a product that we call Alpha Defend, and it's designed specifically for this. We do tabletops, right? They talked about tabletops. We will review your security policies. We'll tell you if anything's missing. We'll do tabletops and sit everybody around the table and talk about it, right? Your IR plan should include your cyber insurance, your executive suite, your legal team, even if they're somebody that you use once a year, we want legal there, your HR department, right? Because we're talking about employee data. Marketing, if you have a marketing person, we want a marketing person there. Because somebody has to talk to the press at some point in time, and marketing is usually pretty good about talking to people. Did I say legal? Yeah, you want legal there because legal is going to tell marketing what they can or cannot say, right? They all have a role. And the first thing they're going to ask at the first tabletop is, why am I here? The IT team knows why they're there, right? Because they're the ones at 3 o'clock in the morning having to restore servers and interface with me, and that's why they're there. They're the technical arm of it, but there's a lot of non-technical stuff that needs to happen during a ransomware attack or a business email compromise that you're invoking your IR plan for that needs to happen. Those people need to know what their responsibility is. You do not want them to learn that in the moment. That's a bad thing. Yes, sir.
So, Peter, you talked about technical things that you do with your team. Mm-hmm. What are some of the soft skills that your organization brings to an affected organization? You know, you talked a little bit about marketing, and we have internal marketing folks, but tell us about incident response organizations like yours. What can they help out in the marketing space or the public facing communications and things like that? What can you bring to bear?
Sure. One of the first things that we can do is help out with the questionnaire that Dan's going to send you, right? And help you interface with him and understand what those questions are. Because if you're not a security guy, you're not speaking the same language, right? And we don't expect you to. Security is its own world. I used to train nurse practitioners way back in the day for United Health Group. And we would give them laptops, and they didn't know anything at all about a laptop. They wrote all of their notes by hand. And we would establish that there's two different languages being spoken. We need to have a common one. Because when they talked about a dump and I talked about a dump, we were not talking about the same thing. So that's important. You want to establish the communication channel and what those things mean. So you want to look at those and interpret it, right? And have somebody help you interpret that. And then have you turn around and help you talk to your C-suite so they understand as well. Right? Because your business owners and your executives, this is not their main focus. This is one of the problems that they have to deal with on a daily basis. They realize it's important, but they don't have the information they need. If you are a sysadmin or a network engineer or an analyst, security analyst, and you roll into the CFO's office and lay your jargon on him, he's going to glass over and send you away. Right? We have to simplify that conversation. We have to put it in terms that they can understand and grasp the concepts of without talking down to them, right? Because nobody likes that, right? But it's complicated. I've been in this game 25 years. It's complicated. I still sometimes struggle with some of the terminology around it or explaining concepts, right? Because we can get into the technical details. You know, I can sit with the IT group back here and the IT guys, and we can talk O365 and how to set up the security on that and where to go, and the rest of you are going to go glass over, head to the bathroom, go get coffee, whatever, right? So those type of soft skills. As for me, myself, what do I bring to it? Other than telling my guys what to do, I am the liaison to your company and to your insurance carrier, your security partner, if I'm not your security partner, because not everybody has an IR team, right? We're kind of a specialized field. And I interface with your C-suite, right? I'm the guy that's saying, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna work as fast as we can. We're gonna work as efficiently as we can so that we're not spending dollars unnecessarily. We're gonna get you back on your feet. We're gonna recover data, because hopefully you have offline, air-gapped backups, right? Do I need to do repeat after me? Everybody write that down already? Okay. We'll stand your systems back up, and I can help with that conversation, right? The reason that I do this is that you see me on your worst day, and a week later, I'm a big damn hero. That's addicting. It is. It's a lot of fun to see people go from their worst day to, we're gonna be okay, and these guys were great. I like that. I like it a lot. Did you have another question?
Yes, we had one that was emailed in, and it says, does your organization do what do you do to check backups to make sure when you are restoring the bad guys don't have access through those, such as they had the code, the script on the server that gave them access, and that was included in the backups?
That's an excellent question. And it's a valid question, and we see it all the time. They've been in your environment for months. Their ransomware is scattered across your network. We've backed it up and stored it. Before we put a machine back on the network, my threat hunters will go through, and by the time we get to the point where we're restoring drives, they know what they're looking for, whether it's a banking Trojan, Emotet, TrickBot, Quack, Ryuk, pick your ransomware, pick your Trojan, and we're going to scan for that and clean that off that server and make sure the server's whole before we connect it back to the network. Yeah, just plugging them back in, we're going to reinfect ourselves and we're going to chase our tail, right? Clean a server, go to the next one, that one gets encrypted, clean that one, go to the next one. And then we look silly, so we try not to look silly. But that's a good question. That's an excellent question. Yeah, we clean them before we put them back online. Other questions? I have like 6 minutes, so yes. Oh, hang on. Is there a mic? Oh, awesome, thank you. I'm more than half deaf, so. Let's try again.
Okay, what kind of technology do you think is useful for detecting if data is getting exfiltrated from your network?
Oh.
As a part of the, because first they pull it out and then they encrypt everything. Do you have any solutions or, sort of easy things you can put into place for that?
Yes, and they're usually expensive. A SIEM or a SIM, depending on how you want to put it, SIEM or SEIM, log aggregator and monitoring, right? They all kind of fit into one piece. What that is you turn monitoring on, you turn the logging on across your network, and you send those logs to a log aggregator, and there's some logic in that log aggregator that looks at that data and says, hey, you have information going out. At 3 o'clock in the morning, you're shipping information to Uzbekistan. We don't do business in Uzbekistan. That might be a problem, right? Small to medium-sized companies, those systems are expensive, right? They're the logarithms and Splunk, thank you. I was thinking Snort, but Splunk. They're expensive, and you have to have people to use them, right? The biggest mistake companies make is that they will buy a SIEM, and they will not hire people to monitor it. It takes one guy for care and feeding of the bloody thing, and it takes another guy to threat hunt. Threat hunting is a specialty. They're kind of unicorns. Good luck. I have trouble finding them, and I'm in the business. There are third-party companies that will do that for you for a small, phenomenal price. No, I'm just kidding. But they do have, depending on how much data you send them and that kind of stuff, they're the Arctic Wolves and the NCIs and companies that will do that for you, right? You send them their logs, and they will alert you, hey, you have a problem. You may not know what to do with that problem, but at least you know that you have a problem, right? And then you call NCI, or you call me, or NCI calls me, and we discuss it, right? You can call me. I have business cards, I'll give them to you. You can call me and say, hey, is this a problem? Sure, I'll talk to you for nothing. If I send people on site, we're gonna have a different conversation, but we can at least have that conversation, right? And you should have my card. And you should have NCI's card. So that when you have that worst day, and you will, you know that you can call me, or you can call your security partner, and we will help you. That's our job, right? Above and beyond anything else. And it goes from feed stores, right? 6-person feed store in Nebraska, encrypted across the board, to banks, hospitals. No one is outside the realm. You're a target. You're a target because you have money. Do you have a lot of money? Maybe not. Do you have a cyber insurance policy? Yeah, you do. They have a lot of money. Does it make sense for you to pay that ransom? Business decision. You tell me. Other questions? Those were good, though. I especially like what happens if your backups are infected, right? To go back to his question about watching data go out, that's a good indicator if there's something going on the network. That is also an incident response, right? That's an incident. We see data going out. That will also get my threat hunters involved. We'll do a compromise assessment and see if you do have somebody in the network, if you have a ghost in the machine. And if you do, then we'll flip it over into full IR and we'll go from there, right? But we can do that anytime. If you think you have a problem, call me. Let's prove that you don't. I like those. We really like those. I like to be able to tell a client, yeah, you're clean. You're good to go. I don't like having to tell them, yeah, you've got Emotet in your system and it's been there for 6 months and all your banking data is gone. Not good. Do you have another?
We do have a question in the back over here.
So I know no systems are perfect from a security perspective, but a lot of the examples you give today, or everyone's given, are talking about your own internal servers being compromised and that kind of stuff. So if I'm starting a brand new business or I'm a small business and I'm open to changing anything from an IT perspective, is there a ideal architecture that you think minimizes your footprint, like using hosted Exchange versus running your own email server, or a web-based CRM system versus running your own CRM server, that kind of stuff?
No solution is perfect. And when I talk about networks, whether you're in the cloud or not, that's still part of your network. So I put them all into one group. I don't differentiate because it's your data. You have access to it. We'll go out and look at it. So I don't. It's a risk-based question, right? Security is about risk. How much risk are you willing to accept? AWS is pretty solid, right? their uptime is good, Azure's uptime is good, Google's uptime is good. It's a valid use of your dollars to put your infrastructure there. If you have it on site, you have to pay people to manage it for you, right? Or you can manage it in the cloud, or pay people to manage it in the cloud. It's all about risk and what your risk appetite is. So no, there's no magic bullet as far as infrastructure goes, or architecture. If there was, I would be in a different business and be very, very wealthy. It's not what he wanted to hear at all. He's like, shit. Pardon my French. Yeah, there's no magic bullet. And I am out of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. That was great. I don't know. First of all, for those of you that served in the armed forces, thank you for serving. But I can tell you that cybersecurity, cybersecurity brought me to PTSD today when we started talking about all this stuff. So I can relate to those that have served. That's why I brought up the armed services. You know, the one thing as we get together and we talk about this stuff, we're not trying to spread fear. The sayings with COVID, we're trying to spread awareness and not fear. That is really the message I want to bring today. As somebody that's gone through this and had a bad actor in your network and not the unknowns that happen when you get that call at 2 o'clock in the morning. Planning, talking to somebody that's gone through it. How did you do it? There's no silver bullet. And it's like, man, again, people want to kind of, I don't want anybody to walk out of here feeling overwhelmed and that we can't do something. There are a lot of things we can do. There are ways we can separate our data, not putting all of our eggs in one basket. The term that's been thrown out many times today is that air gap between your data sets and separating your data sets. It's just so critical. But we are going to take a break right now, and a 15-minute break. When we come back, we have John Bonnage from the FBI that he's probably going to scare us just a little bit more, but it's really a great presentation. I've seen it before. So we'll be back in 15 minutes.